Being alone is the most dangerous form of power, and most people will spend their entire lives running from it without ever understanding what they were running from. Not dangerous in the way society trained you to think. Not dangerous like desperation or instability or giving up on people. Dangerous the way a person becomes dangerous when they finally stop being manageable, when they stop being readable, when they stop being something other people can reach inside and redirect at will. Most people have been surrounded their whole lives and called it connection. They have been available and called it loyalty. They have been endlessly responsive and called it maturity. What they were actually doing, what most people do without ever consciously choosing it, was signing contract after invisible contract with every person they let close. Be reachable, be explainable, be emotionally open, manage their reactions, smooth the edges of your decisions so nobody feels disrupted by your choices. Sign enough of those contracts and something quiet happens. Your life slows down, not because you lack ambition or intelligence, because every single move you make now passes through filters. You hesitate, you calculate how people will react, you adjust, and you call that being considerate. Machiavelli would call it something else entirely. Here is something worth sitting with. The people who are plugged into everything and everyone, the ones who are always available, always in the group chat, always in the loop, are almost always the easiest to manage. Not because they are weak, because they are predictable, because they cannot disappear without raising concern, cannot act suddenly without owing an explanation, cannot move without something that looks like courtesy but functions like permission. That mechanism, the social web of access and obligation, is so normalized that most people never identify it as a system of control at all. They just feel the friction when they try to move quickly. They feel the slowdown when they try to act decisively. They attribute it to overthinking or fear. It is not. It is the weight of every invisible obligation accumulated through years of being available to people who came to expect it. Machiavelli understood this when most thinkers were still focused on morality and virtue. He was focused on mechanics. He observed that entanglement creates hesitation, and hesitation is where power goes to die. Not because hesitation is immoral, because it makes you predictable, slow, easy to redirect. The people who socialize the most are the people whose lives are most thoroughly arranged around other people's comfort. And comfort, other people's comfort at your expense, is one of the most underrated forms of control that exists. When you start withdrawing, the first thing you notice is not peace. It is discomfort. Your nervous system, trained on constant input and social feedback, does not quietly accept the silence. It protests. It manufactures urgency. It makes the absence of noise feel like something is wrong. That restlessness is not a sign that isolation does not work. It is a sign that it is working. You are experiencing the withdrawal that comes with ending a dependency most people never acknowledged they had. The dependency on external input to feel settled, on other people's reactions to confirm your decisions, on the steady hum of social activity to drown out the internal voice that has been trying to tell you something for years. Push through that phase and something clears. Your decisions become quieter, less performance, more precision. Your standards stop requiring explanation because there is no one in the room whose reaction you are managing. You stop adjusting your behavior in advance to prevent someone else's discomfort. You stop pre-apologizing for things that do not require apology. And gradually, you begin acting from internal certainty rather than external validation. That shift is not confidence in the traditional sense. Confidence still tracks feedback, still registers approval. This shift is closer to indifference, not cold, not bitter, but genuinely self-contained. When you stop caring who agrees, who understands, who stays, You remove the leverage that other people held over your decisions without you ever consciously granting it to them. Here is the thing about withdrawing that nobody prepares you for. The people around you will react, and the way they react will tell you everything about why they were there in the first place. The first reaction is usually curiosity disguised as concern. Where have you been? You've been quiet. Is everything okay? Those questions are not about your well-being. They are the system checking whether your withdrawal is temporary or permanent. If you return quickly and explain yourself, nothing changes. The absence is logged as an anomaly, and the old patterns resume immediately. If you hold the withdrawal, something else happens. The framing shifts from curiosity to morality. You've changed. You're not the same. You've become distant. Notice what that language is actually doing. It is not describing an action you took. It is describing a character flaw you supposedly developed. The goal is to make you self-correct not through argument, but through shame. You are being told that the withdrawal itself is a sign that something is wrong with you. That the old version, available, responsive, emotionally open, easy to read, was the correct version. That this version, the one that no longer performs on demand, is a problem to be fixed. If that fails, the responses escalate. Exclusion. You get left out of plans, left out of information, left out of conversations that once included you automatically. Most people assume this is punishment. It is. But punishment only works if you fear the thing being withheld. If you no longer fear exclusion. If you have genuinely rebuilt your internal foundation so that inclusion is no longer the price of your emotional stability, then the punishment reverses. Their exclusion becomes your confirmation that the withdrawal is producing exactly what it was supposed to produce. What people miss about isolation is that it is not primarily about other people. The most important thing it does happens inside you. Without constant social input, your thinking changes in a specific and irreversible way. The fragmentation stops. When you are embedded in social life, always partially attending to messages, to other people's moods, to the invisible maintenance work of ongoing relationships, your thoughts never fully complete themselves. You operate in interruptions. Isolated long enough, your mind starts running in full chains instead of fragments. You begin thinking past the immediate moment. If I allow this access now, what does that mean in 6 months? If I make this decision publicly, what precedent does it set? If I respond to this message, what rhythm does that establish? That is not overthinking. That is strategic thinking, and it genuinely cannot exist in the presence of constant social noise. Machiavelli warned that rulers who surrounded themselves excessively lost clarity, not because people lied to them, though some did, but because too many voices dilute decision-making. Every additional opinion introduced friction. Every additional relationship created an obligation. The ruler who reduced proximity did not hate his advisors. He protected his judgment from the accumulated weight of managing their access. That same principle operates in every human life, at every level. The more people have reliable access to you, the more your decisions become negotiations rather than choices. Isolation ends the negotiation, not by making you cold, by making you clear. There is a layer to isolation that most people underestimate because it sounds too simple to be powerful. When you stop being predictable, the dynamic of every relationship you are in changes automatically. No confrontation required, no demands made, no boundaries announced in a speech that then needs to be defended. You simply change your pattern, and the change in pattern does all the work that a conversation never could. Think about what predictability actually gives people. It gives them a map. When they know your rhythm, when they can anticipate your responses, your availability, your emotional reactions, they can navigate around you effortlessly. They can time requests for when you are most likely to say yes. They can apply pressure at the points they have learned produce the outcomes they want. They can operate in your vicinity with complete comfort because you have never introduced meaningful uncertainty. The moment you become unpredictable, not chaotically, not aggressively, just through quietly refusing to operate on the schedule others established for you, that map stops working. People have to slow down. They have to recalibrate. They have to think before assuming access. And thinking before assuming access is the beginning of something that feels like respect, but is actually something more fundamental. It is the recognition that you are not a static resource, that interacting with you has a cost they can no longer calculate in advance. One of the things isolation does that surprises people most is what it does to your relationship with time. When your days are not fragmented by the invisible obligations of social maintenance, time stops feeling like it is always running out. Hours become deeper. Thoughts that used to get interrupted at the halfway point start completing themselves. Plans that used to be driven by what was immediately socially convenient start stretching toward what is actually worth building. Long-term thinking is not a personality trait. It is a condition that requires a specific kind of mental environment to develop in. Most people live in an environment of constant interruption and wonder why they keep making short-term decisions. The answer is not discipline. The answer is reduction. Reduce the interruptions, and the thinking changes on its own. Isolated people are dangerous to short-term systems specifically because of this. They are operating on a timeline that the people around them cannot fully track. They are building toward outcomes that will not be visible for months or years. They are playing a game whose rules most people around them cannot read because most people around them are playing a completely different game, one measured in days and reactions and immediate social outcomes. The disconnection between those two timelines is one of the reasons isolated people are consistently underestimated. And being underestimated, Machiavelli would tell you, is one of the most strategically useful positions a person can occupy. When isolation has been in place long enough, something happens to your internal experience of pressure. Pressure needs reaction to function. Guilt requires responsiveness. Urgency requires someone willing to treat manufactured deadlines as real ones. Emotional manipulation requires someone whose emotional state is accessible to be manipulated. Isolation systematically removes all of those conditions. Not because you become numb to things, because your baseline is no longer located outside yourself. Other people's emotional states stop being something you are responsible for managing. Their urgency stops triggering your urgency automatically. Their discomfort stops generating a compulsion in you to resolve it. And when those automatic responses are absent, pressure loses its grip. Attempts at manipulation collapse before they fully form because there is nothing in the environment to give them traction. People describe this experience differently depending on how they encounter it. Some call it confidence. Some call it coldness. Some call it emotional unavailability. What it actually is non-reactivity. And non-reactivity is genuinely unsettling to systems built on emotional exchange because those systems have no protocol for someone who receives a pressure signal and simply does not transmit the expected response. The feedback loop breaks, and broken feedback loops are how social control loses its hold. Here is where most people fail when they attempt isolation as a strategy rather than experiencing it as a genuine shift. They treat it as a mood rather than a structure. They withdraw when they are angry or exhausted, and they return when they feel better or when the social pressure to return becomes more uncomfortable than the withdrawal itself. And nothing changes because the system correctly reads that withdrawal as emotional rather than structural. Emotional withdrawal has an end date that others can feel. They wake you out. They know from experience that if they apply the right pressure, appeals to history, appeals to emotion, appeals to what makes you feel guilty, you will eventually come back and explain yourself. And the moment you explain yourself, the old pattern reasserts. Structural isolation is different. It is not a reaction to anything. It is a position. It does not require justification because it was never personal. It does not have an end date because it is not about feelings. It is about the deliberate regulation of access. Who gets proximity? Who gets response? Who gets explanation? Who gets your time? When withdrawal is structural, the system cannot wait it out because there is nothing to wait out. There is simply a new set of conditions that remain consistent regardless of what pressure is applied. Consistency is the mechanism. Consistency exhausts every attempt to reverse the change through emotional appeal. Eventually, people stop trying to reverse it and start adapting to it. And adaptation is the beginning of a new hierarchy. Eventually, the practice of isolation stops being something you do and becomes something you are. The deliberateness falls away not because you abandon the principle, but because the principle became orientation. The poles that once governed you, toward response, toward explanation, toward filling silence, toward smoothing tension, are still there. You feel them. They just no longer move you. A message arrives, and you feel the familiar pull toward immediate response. You observe the pull. You do not follow it. A tension appears in a room, and you feel the familiar pull toward resolution. You observe it. You let it sit. Someone expects access, and you feel the pull toward accommodation. You notice it. You hold your position. Over time, this changes something structural in how you experience social environments. You are present in them without being absorbed by them. You participate without losing the thread of your own direction. You engage without entangling. Machiavelli's deepest insight about power was not about tactics or strategy in the conventional sense. It was about independence. The most secure form of influence is not built on fear, because fear requires constant reinforcement. It is not built on affection, because affection requires constant maintenance. It is built on independence from both. When you no longer need people's approval to feel stable, and you no longer fear their disapproval enough to modify your behavior to prevent it, you have removed both of the primary levers through which social systems maintain control over individuals. What remains is not emptiness. It is sovereignty, a fixed internal position that does not shift when people enter or exit, a baseline that does not depend on external conditions to remain stable, a version of yourself that was always there, underneath the accumulated weight of every invisible contract you ever signed, clearer now, and finally free to move. There is no dramatic conclusion to this path, no applause, no audience, no moment where the transformation announces itself, just a quiet morning where you notice that the urgency you used to carry everywhere is gone. That the weight of other people's reactions is no longer something you are managing in the background of every interaction. That your decisions feel clean in a way they never did before. That you are no longer waiting for permission from anyone in any form to be exactly who you are and to move in exactly the direction you have chosen. That is what being alone actually produces when you go all the way through it, instead of turning back at the discomfort. Not isolation from life. Isolation from the parts of life that were never serving you. Not the removal of connection, but the removal of the dependency that was masquerading as connection. What is left is real. What is left is chosen. And what is chosen freely, from a position of genuine self-sufficiency, is the only thing worth keeping. Machiavelli never promised this path was comfortable. He promised it was effective, and he was right about both. If this hit something real, subscribe. More dark philosophy, and cold strategy coming. Like if you stayed all the way through. Drop in the comments what you are done explaining yourself about. The game is already on. Let's talk about something most people never address honestly. The reason withdrawal feels so threatening to the people around you has nothing to do with you personally. It has to do with what your availability was doing for them that they never had to name out loud. When you are always reachable, always ready to respond, always emotionally present on demand, you are providing something. Stability, validation, the comfortable feeling of having someone in their corner who would show up whenever the need arose. That is not connection in any deep sense. That is a service. And when a service disappears, the person who relied on it does not grieve the relationship. They grieve the convenience. They grieve the version of themselves that felt more secure when the resource was reliably available. Understanding that distinction changes how you experience the resistance that comes with withdrawal. You stop taking it personally. You stop interpreting their discomfort as evidence that the withdrawal was wrong. You start seeing it for what it is. The natural protest of someone who lost access to something they had come to depend on and never bothered to examine whether that dependence was healthy for either of you. Machiavelli was clear about something that people in modern life find uncomfortable to accept. Most relationships are transactional at their foundation, even the ones that feel the most genuine. Not because people are evil or calculating, but because human beings are drawn toward what benefits them and away from what costs them. That is not cynicism. That is observation. And the person who accepts that observation without bitterness is the person who can navigate relationships with clear eyes instead of spending years confused about why people behave the way they do when dynamics shift. When you withdraw, you are not betraying connection. You are testing which connections were real and which were simply arrangements that served everyone's convenience. The ones that survive the test without drama, without guilt trips, without escalating pressure to return to the old version of yourself, are the ones worth keeping. Everything else was always going to reveal itself eventually. Isolation just accelerates the timeline. There is also something worth understanding about what reentry looks like when you have genuinely gone through the isolation process rather than just temporarily retreating from it. You do not return as the same person, and you do not perform the old version to make others comfortable. The temptation is real. When you step back into social environments after a period of genuine withdrawal, there is a pull toward familiarity, toward the easy warmth of slipping back into old roles and old dynamics, because those dynamics are comfortable, and comfortable is seductive after a period of deliberate difficulty. Resist that pull completely, not because warmth is wrong, because the old roles were built on a version of you that no longer exists, and inhabiting them again out of social ease erases the internal architecture that the isolation built. You re-enter measured. You re-enter present without being absorbed. You engage without entangling. You respond without over-explaining. You are in the conversation without making the conversation the center of your internal universe. That distinction is felt by everyone around you before a single word is spoken. They cannot name it immediately, but they feel the difference. The person who left and the person who returned are not the same, and some part of them registers that immediately. Some will adapt to this new version without issue. Some will spend weeks trying to locate the old version through escalating familiarity, old jokes, references to shared history, appeals to the dynamic that used to work. Let them try. Stay consistent. Consistency does what no explanation ever could. It communicates, without words, that the change is not temporary, that there is nothing to wait out, that this is simply who you are now, and the choice in front of them is whether to relate to this version or to drift toward people who require less from them. One of the quietest and most powerful things that happens to a person who has genuinely lived through extended isolation is that they become immune to a specific kind of manipulation that operates almost universally in social environments. The manipulation of urgency. Modern life is structured around manufactured urgency. The message that needs an immediate reply. The situation that requires your input right now before the window closes. The person whose crisis only you can resolve, and only if you respond in the next 20 minutes. Most people have been trained to treat these urgency signals as real, to drop whatever they are doing and redirect their attention to wherever the loudest alarm is ringing. Isolated people stop doing this, not because they become indifferent to genuine emergencies, because they develop the ability to distinguish between genuine urgency and manufactured urgency, and they stop supplying the reaction that manufactured urgency requires to sustain itself. When you do not respond to artificial urgency, something instructive happens. The crisis that required your immediate attention resolves itself. The situation that was presented as catastrophic turns out to have been manageable all along. The person who needed you desperately finds another way forward. This does not happen because the situation was fake. It happens because urgency, in most cases, is a pressure tactic rather than a genuine emergency. It is the system trying to pull you back into reactive mode where it can direct your attention and your energy. The isolated person has learned to let urgency sit without automatically responding to it. And that habit alone produces a level of control over their own time and attention that most people never experience. The final thing worth understanding about isolation as a form of power is also the hardest one to sit with. There is a cost to it that does not go away, not a cost that outweighs the benefit, but a real cost that deserves honest acknowledgement rather than the kind of motivational gloss that pretends transformation is entirely gain with no loss attached. When you rebuild your internal foundation on self-sufficiency rather than social validation, you become genuinely harder to reach emotionally. Not impossible to reach, not incapable of real connection, but the shallower connections, the ones built on availability and routine and the comfort of shared proximity, stop feeling like enough. They stop satisfying in the way they once did. And because most of the social world operates at that shallower level, you end up feeling genuinely separate from environments that you are physically present in. Groups feel temporary. Collective excitement feels distant. Shared emotion feels like something happening near you rather than something happening to you. Most people experience this as loneliness and conclude that the isolation went too far. It did not go too far. You simply arrived at the honest version of what most social connection actually is once the performance layer is stripped away. The people who make peace with that reality, who stop expecting shallow connection to fill the space that genuine self-sufficiency now occupies, are the ones who stop feeling the loss as loss. They start feeling it as freedom. The freedom to stop pretending that being surrounded was ever the same thing as not being alone. The freedom to stop filling silence with noise just because silence feels unfamiliar. The freedom to exist without performing existence for an audience that was mostly just grateful you are making yourself available. That freedom is quiet. It does not announce itself. It does not feel like winning. It feels like finally stopping the work of being something you were never supposed to be in the first place. And from that stillness, every genuinely decisive move becomes possible. Every real choice opens up. Every direction that was previously blocked by the accumulated weight of invisible obligations becomes available. Not because the world changed, because you finally stopped letting the world arrange you. That is what being alone actually means when you go all the way through it. Not absence, position, not emptiness, clarity, not the end of connection, the beginning of the only kind worth having.